morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice Radio. So today, we're going to be taking a look at a new Florges and a new Floette. Yeah, we need to double up in this video, ladies and gentlemen. But when I start telling you about what they all do, it should become fairly obvious why we have to do a bit of a doubling up. And it's probably also fairly obvious at this stage that our translation, like so many of them lately, comes from the lovely Antoine Boulet. So, now it's actually kind of cool, because I've only just told you about a deck using the Florges from Forbidden Light, along with the new Lily's Pokédoll, to basically recover that Pokédoll over and over again and never give up a prize. This one could also be pretty gosh darn good, although awkward, ladies and gentlemen. Very, very awkward. So if we start off having a little bit of a look at the basics here, we have got 130 HP, which for a stage 2 is frankly garbage. Sorry, it's true. We're used to stuff like Empoleon having 150 or Haxorus having 150. I mean, goodness, there's plenty of basics out there like Buzzwole that have 130 HP. No, we don't like it. Retreat cost of 2 means no access to U-turn board, which we also don't like. But we do like the weakness to metal, because there just aren't any good metal decks around at the moment. Resistance to darkness, also very, very nice. We're kind of in favour of this. Although, to be honest, the most relevant one that this could use is Umbreon and Darkrai, except they hit a natural 150 minus the weakness is 130, and you're still getting KO'd. Yeah, 130 on a stage 2 really isn't good. And you're a fairy Pokemon, so you can take advantage of stuff like Wonder Labyrinth Prism Star, if you so wish, to increase your opponent's energy cost. So, you know, that could be kind of fun. Shame we've lost stuff like Fairy Garden, to be honest, but we have, so hey-ho. But it is the ability that makes us rather happy here. And the ability reads, once during your turn, when you play this card from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, pick 2 random cards from your opponent's hand. Your opponent reveals these cards and shuffles them into their deck. Yeah, this is pretty good, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we need to take a step back for a moment and remember that in the expanded format, Pokemon just banned Jesse and James. And there's many reasons why, but one example would be, I go first. I play red card. My opponent goes down to a 4-card hand. I play Jesse and James so that my opponent has to discard 2 cards from their hand. I discard 2 Weezing from my hand because I also have to discard using Jesse and James. But each Weezing I discard makes my opponent discard another card from their hand. Oh look, my opponent is now starting the game with a 0-card hand. And now we've got something else that can wreck our opponent's hand. Now, one thing that we need to point out right at the beginning here, this is not a turn 1 option. We're talking a stage 2 Pokemon. So it's not like you're going to be able to wreck your opponent's hand before they've ever drawn a card. And that is why Jesse and James got banned, because of the you've not played any cards yet and now you're not going to be able to potential. That is not where we are here. But make no mistake about it, this is going to be able to wreck your opponent's hand. I mean, we've got Reset Stamp. Now, to be fair, Reset Stamp has been banned over in Japan. Now, we've had no word of a ban over here for Reset Stamp, but by the same token, every card that's been banned in Japan has ended up being banned over here. I suppose there's no guarantee that it will be, but there is a very high likelihood that it may well end up being so. Something to keep an eye on, ladies and gentlemen. We might end up losing that. And what that can do is put your opponent down to a low hand size. Your opponent's got 2 prizes remaining. Drop a Reset Stamp, they have to shuffle their hand into their deck, draw a new hand of 2 cards. Evolve up into Florges here, and oh look, now your opponent shuffles 2 cards at random from their hand into their deck, but of course there are only 2 cards, and oh look, your opponent literally has 0 cards left in their deck. That is potentially awkward, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, that's pretty bad. And let's not forget, you can still use Jesse and James. You can still use Wheezing. We've got Honchkrow GX that has a GX attack whereby you choose 2 cards from your opponent's hand and then you actually discard them, not shuffle them back into their deck. And all of a sudden, we've got a lot of potential here for just wrecking your opponent's hand. But this is the point in the video where we have to go, hang on a second, Wassy. Didn't you say you were going to look at Floette as well? And yes, I did. Because the ability is also called flower picking. It's very similar. It is not exactly the same. It reads, once during your turn, when you play this card from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, you may pick a random card from your opponent's hand and shuffle it into their deck. Oh, look! It is like Florges, although it is very important to note that even though they are both called flower picking, Floette is 1 card, Florges is 2. And at this stage, I'm reminded very, very much of Frogadier and Greninja. Because they had a very similar thing, except it was dropping damage, not disrupting the hand. So Frogadier, when you evolved into it, you dropped 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. And Greninja GX, when you evolved into it, you would drop 3 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. And the point here is very simple. You can combine these. And what you essentially do, hopefully, is you get 2 or 3 basics down. And then the next turn you get 2 or 3 Floette. And then your opponent loses 2 or 3 cards from their hand. And then next turn you get 2 or 3 Florges and they lose 4 to 6 cards from their hand. And all of a sudden, you are wrecking their hand. And it's not just a 1-turn thing. It is turn after turn. You've got the Floette turn and then the Florges turn. But we're not done there, ladies and gentlemen, because let's not forget Devolution Spray Z. Devolution Spray Z is actually better than Devolution Spray. Well, depends how you look at it. But in this situation, there is a strong argument that it's better. Devolution Spray puts the top evolution into your hand. Devolution Spray Z lets you put as many evolutions from one Pokemon as you like into your deck. Okay, but it's both of them. Which means every time you get a Devolution Spray Z, you get a Floette and a Florges back into your deck, which could potentially end up being 3 extra cards shuffled from your opponent's hand back into their deck. And yes, it goes from their hand back into their deck. They can get those cards back, but they've got to get them back. And you can potentially be getting every card from their hand and shuffling them back into their deck. We've seen that Gardevoir and Sylveon does this as a GX attack. Makes your opponent shuffle their entire hand into their deck. Well, this can do it just using the abilities. And it's not like you have to keep doing it every turn. If you can get your opponent down to a 0-card hand, you may well have won the game. You can always try using Chip Ice Axe to fix their top deck a little bit, to try and make it worse. And yes, this is a stage 2. And yes, you really want to evolve up manually, not using rare candy. But there is so much potential going on here that I really do think the pair of these abilities together could lead us to a deck where your opponent just has no cards in hand. And especially when you build in other stuff like Jesse and James, I expect this to be a deck that we are seeing and that people are going to play. Now there is an attack on Florges here, but it's not why we're playing it. 1 fairy, 1 colorless entity, flip 3 coins, 60 damage times the number of heads. And then this Pokemon is confused. We don't even have stuff like Victini nowadays to try and increase the chance of hitting more heads. So I'm just not loving it, ladies and gentlemen. It's not to say it's a bad attack, but I've got to flip coins and I've got no way to try and cheat the coins into my favour. And even if I hit 3 heads, fine, I'm getting stuff like Blacephalon, but I'm still not even getting the bigger GXs like Naganadel, let alone any tag team GXs. If you're completely wrecking your opponent's hand, go for it. This is a decent attack. But honestly, I would much rather play this with another attacking Pokemon. Just any vaguely competent attacking Pokemon, remembering that you don't even need to play the Fairy Energy, so it doesn't really matter. Though I would consider playing a Fairy Pokemon so that you can use Wonder Labyrinth Prism Star here, and really force your opponent to have extra energy while not having any cards in their hand. Also, fine, they can play their own stadium to bump one the Labyrinth Prism Star, but that's going to be difficult with no cards in hand. I'm giving this 4 Wossies, and that sounds really generous, and it may well be overly generous, but my point here is extremely simple. These 2 cards together could lead to a situation where your opponent has 0 cards in hand, and I do think someone is going to make this into a consistent deck, and it is going to be extremely annoying. That's what I think. But I'd very much like to know what you think, ladies and gentlemen, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassiePlays, where we talk about a whole bunch of games that don't even have any Pokemon in. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.